A new earth-shaking piece of news in the Middle East. A dramatic call by the IDF to the residents of Yemen. Evacuate the international airport in Sana'a. Just today, the Israeli Air Force is in the air in total silence, dodging every raider of the Houthis. For the second time in only 24 hours, Israel struck in Yemen, and for the first time since the war began, struck the international airport in Sana'a. So in a moment, we'll dive into the details together and understand what's happening in Yemen. But first, there are more breaking news from Israel. Hodeidah port in Yemen suffered a severe hit as Israeli Air Force jets struck strategic targets associated with the Houthis in Yemen. And shortly thereafter, another Iranian-linked asset was attacked, this time in Lebanon. All of that is in retaliation for the Houthi ballistic missile which struck near Ben Gurion International Airport in central Israel on Sunday, nearly hitting me personally, and that's the retaliation that Israel has begun against the Houthis. So the State of Israel has announced Operation Gideon's Chariots in the Gaza Strip and the date on which it will begin. The operation, approved by the cabinet in Israel, is intended to subdue Hamas and free our hostages. The central component of the operation will be evacuating the civilians from the combat zones and employing heavy tools against a terror infrastructure. This has already begun, as on Monday afternoon, IDF troops in the center of Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip destroyed Hamas launchers that were ready for firing. There was also some shocking new information discovered in the last 24 hours regarding the negotiations over the hostage release agreement. And United States President Donald Trump is coming to the Middle East, and many of the players in this region are scrambling to adjust their positions on various issues. One such player is Qatar, which until now has been quietly discouraging Hamas from accepting the Witkoff framework for releasing the hostages. Now, Israel has made it known that if Hamas does not take the deal that is on the table currently, by which hostages can be exchanged for territorial withdrawals from the Gaza Strip, then in a few days that deal will be off the table, and in the course of the new operation, Israel will seize territory and not give it back even in exchange for hostages. And Qatar's position is now very different, and it seems to be trying to convince Hamas to take the deal while it's still available. The clock is ticking as Trump will arrive in the region in a few days, and Israel's preparations for Operations Gideon's Chariots have already begun. But even before we get into that point, there is a possibility of breaking Hamas without further kinetic action. That possibility is represented by the Little Gaza Plan. This is a proposal by the IDF for a new strategy combining civilian pressure on Hamas through externally managed humanitarian components. The idea is to sever the link between Hamas and the population in the Gaza Strip and undermine its authority. Ironically, Hamas itself might be helping this strategy to succeed, as they have started stealing goods and executing Gazan civilians in broad daylight. Of course, they've done this under the cover of a sham security operation carried out by their sham law enforcement units in the Gaza Strip, which are basically thugs and terrorists. So the thugs from this unit simply approach a merchant trying to sell things to the civilian population, accuse him of something, confiscate everything that he has, tie his hands behind his back, and then lead him off to be executed. It's a very ugly scene, and we're not gonna show it to all of you for obvious reasons, but we'll tell you about it. In the north, Hezbollah has suffered yet another humiliation on top of all that they've lost so far in just the last several months. This time, the defeat has come at the hands of Lebanon's National Army, which seized a factory operated by Hezbollah near the Syrian border and used to produce Captagon, that is also known as the poor man's cocaine, and is produced here in the Middle East. And Syria was the largest export for the last few years while the Assad regime was still ruling. So trafficking in this narcotic became a major source of revenue for all of Iran's proxy groups in the Middle East, but now that source is quickly drying up. And on top of that, Israel's Mossad is being cheered across the Arab world for its successful operations against Hezbollah. We'll tell you all about that in today's report. And meanwhile, in Iran, the regime is claiming that they have deployed missiles across the country that can bypass American defensive systems, but they offer no evidence of this, and their boasts have proven to be hollow in the past. We must also look at what Iran's part is in the launches from Yemen, the constraints on Israel, and the new access in the region. Despite the Houthis' declarations and the names that they give the missiles, everyone knows that Iran stands behind their arsenal. However, the negotiations between Iran and the Trump administration affect Israel's ability to respond to the Houthi attacks, and there is also a limited potential for such a response to affect the situation there. So speaking of the negotiations, the goal seems to change from day to day. But on Monday, President Donald Trump issued a statement saying that he will only accept an agreement that ensures the complete dismantling of Iran's nuclear facilities, which is exactly what Israel has been saying that it wants all along. So while all of this is going on, Israel must also keep an eye on Turkey's attempts to forge a new terror axis in the region and take the place of the Iranian axis after the blow it has received. So guys, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel and in this region on day 578 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are acting under the orders of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. And guys, a moment before we begin, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already by clicking on the subscribe button, so you're not just ensuring that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground, you're also making an investment in sharing the truth around the world. For the second time in just 24 hours, Israel has struck targets in Yemen. And for the first time since the war began, the Israeli Air Force has hit Sana'a International Airport. In today's strike, Israeli aircraft destroyed Houthi infrastructure at the airport, forcing a full shutdown. The mission has concluded, and the jets have returned to base in Israel. More than 20 aircrafts also hit the main terminal and planes that were used by the Houthis. The airfield, much like Hodeidah Port, was hit very strong last night and has been used by the Houthi terrorist organization to move weapons and personnel, and this is according to IDF intelligence. It is yet another example of the group's exploitation of civilian infrastructure for terror purposes. Following the strike, senior Houthi official Muhammad el-Bakhaiti told Lebanon's El Mayadeen channel, "We tell the Americans, the British, and the Zionists that our military actions in support of Gaza will continue regardless of casualties. The Zionists cross red lines and must await Yemen's response." Sky News Arabic reports that the terminal and all the passenger aircrafts at the airport were completely destroyed, and a Houthi spokesman declared Israel is trying to change the face of the Middle East. "We will impose a new equation, siege against siege." And meanwhile, El Arabiya El Jadid says power outages have spread across much of Sana'a in Yemen after strikes on the Haziz and Dakhban power stations in Yemen. The IDF confirms that several major power facilities around Sana'a were also targeted, alleging that the Houthi regime relies on these power stations to sustain their rule, again underscoring the militants' use of civilians. The terrorists like to place their infrastructure within civilian facilities, like what we see in Gaza. In addition, the El Amran concrete plant north of the Sana'a area and is crucial to the Houthi tunnel building and military infrastructure development was hit, damaging both the group's economy and its war-fighting capabilities. Military officials stress that the strikes were precise, with precautions taken to limit civilian harm. The operation was authorized by the Air Force commander and the chief of the general staff of the IDF. And notably, Houthi media did not mention the fact that the IDF issued an evacuation warning ahead of the airport strike, the first time that Israel has publicly announced a pending attack in Yemen. Until now, all such strikes were conducted under strict secrecy. As a reminder, yesterday's operation was reported in Arab media as a joint United States-Israeli strike, though Israeli sources deny that, and it saw more than 30 Israeli aircrafts that hit Hodeidah port. This is according to Saudi outlets. The Saudi Al Hada channel also reports widespread panic near the Sana'a airport after the IDF warning. So we will continue to follow every development, and guys, we ask you to keep spreading the truth, follow our updates, and most importantly, pray. And if you want to see more of these reports, please hit the subscribe button on TBN Israel YouTube channel. So we begin today's report by taking a look at Israel's retaliation for the ballistic missile strike which penetrated Israel's defenses on Sunday and impacted near the Ben Gurion International Airport. Almost immediately, Israel announced that the period of restraint is over, and less than 30 hours later, on Monday afternoon, Israeli Air Force jets are once again striking within Yemen. The Israeli strikes are focusing on the port of Hodeidah and another factory in the area in the pattern similar to past strikes, but this time it's a wide-scale attack being conducted in coordination with the United States and according to Arab media outlets. But for now, reports out of Saudi Arabia indicate that more than 30 Israeli aircrafts took part in the strikes on the port of Hodeidah in Yemen. Most of the targets are infrastructure and energy facilities, and the Air Force also attacked in 3 waves in Sana'a. An Israeli security source noted that the strike was carried out in parallel with an American strike, and this is confirmed by reports of American strikes in Sana'a at about the same time. The source continued by saying that 50 munitions were dropped. We destroyed the port of Hodeidah and concrete production plants that were used to manufacture weapons facilities. This is a very powerful strike and not the last one. The games are over. Indeed, it is worth remembering that the missile that hit yesterday at the Ben Gurion International Airport in Israel came after more than 25 launches of missiles and drones over a few weeks against Israel. Until now, Israel had refrained from direct response against the Houthis, mainly because of the American strikes in Yemen, but also due to Washington's request to Jerusalem not to respond and to leave it to them, to the United States. This request was accompanied by a reminder that no Houthi weapons had landed in Israel in a very long time. But now that has changed. And not only did the Houthi missile hit Israeli soil, the impact site was inside the perimeter, the area of the Ben Gurion International Airport, which also led several foreign airliners to cancel flights to Israel, not to mention that several Israelis were moderately injured in this strike. Therefore, following the impact, a security discussion held yesterday came to the conclusion that the period of restraint is over. Israel said yesterday that Washington had acted very intensively and effectively, but the Houthis still possess a full stock of ballistic missiles, and although the Americans said that they prefer to act alone against the rebels, Israel cannot refrain from taking action. However, the Israeli action will be taken in full coordination with the Trump administration. It is worth remembering that Israel has struck the Houthis with airstrikes 4 times in this war, and the Americans have been pounding them since the middle of March, carrying out twice as many strikes since the start of this campaign than the Biden administration carried out in 13 months. But despite suffering immense damage to their economic and to their military infrastructure, the Houthis are still capable of firing missiles at Israel and civilian ships in the Red Sea. This problem probably can't be solved from the air. It's it's going to take a ground campaign. The internationally recognized government of Yemen has said it is assembling a force of around 80,000 fighters to try and push the Houthis out of the cities in eastern Yemen, but they won't move without support from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. But both of these countries have bitter memories of their failed efforts against the Houthis in the past, and it is unclear if they're willing to offer their support to such efforts again in the future. And speaking of support, I would like to tell you about a way that you can personally support the brave soldiers of the IDF and their families. Thousands of reserve soldiers in Israel have been called back to duty. That means thousands of families left to manage on their own. And for many, it also means having to take a break from working, closing their shops, putting their businesses on hold just to serve and defend this country. But life doesn't pause. The bills keep coming in. And for small businesses, business owners, artisans, and many more people around this country, that lost income can be devastating. Take, for example, a small family-run workshop in Jerusalem that crafts traditional olive wood carvings. With the primary artisan called to reserve duty, production halted and their income vanished overnight. That's where Artza steps in. Artza works directly with local Israeli businesses, buying their products, featuring their work, and giving them a financial boost when they need it most. So when you subscribe, you're not just receiving beautiful handmade items from the Holy Land. By subscribing to Artza, right now you're helping real people, families in Israel get through an incredibly difficult situation. So please visit www.artzabox.com and use the code TBNIL for a 10% discount off your subscription. That's how you can be part of helping Israel recover, one box, one family at a time. Now, back to the news, and we switch our focus to the situation in the Gaza Strip, where the IDF destroyed an array of rocket launchers armed and ready to fire during operations in the city of Khan Yunis on Sunday. Multiple secondary explosions following the IDF strike indicate that a large number of rockets were stored in that location, ready to be loaded into launchers. This is an example of the kind of thing that the IDF is doing every single day in the Gaza Strip to protect the people of Israel. However, these kinds of small unit actions are not enough to decisively defeat Hamas. And so overnight between Sunday and Monday, the Security Diplomatic Cabinet in Israel unanimously approved Operation Gideon's Chariots, which will see the expansion of the IDF's activities in the Gaza Strip. And in parallel, a plan was approved in principle for the distribution of humanitarian aid to Gaza residents by foreign private companies in compounds that will be established in specific areas in the Gaza Strip to make sure that Hamas will not gain the humanitarian aid. So as is known, last Saturday the IDF began calling up tens of thousands of reservists under Tzav 8. This is order number 8 to call civilians to join the IDF. So this was done because the political echelon and the IDF decided to prepare immediately for expanding the fighting in the Gaza Strip. And according to the plan that was formulated by the Chief of Staff and the IDF command and was approved by the Minister of Defense and the Prime Minister of Israel, the IDF will reinforce forces and act powerfully to defeat and subdue Hamas and destroy its military and its governmental capabilities, while applying strong pressure for the release of all of our hostages. And one new element in this operation is a voluntary relocation plan for Gaza residents, especially for those who will be concentrated in the south outside of Hamas control. This will also deny Hamas the ability to steal humanitarian supplies and sell them to the Gaza population at an inflated price, which has been a major source of revenue for them all throughout this war. So, once Hamas has been separated from the civilian population, the IDF will begin hitting them with hammer blows, as a strong protective envelope will be provided to the maneuvering forces from the land, from the air and from the sea, while heavy tools will be used to neutralize explosives and destroy threatening buildings. Unlike in the past, the IDF will remain in every area that is captured to prevent the return of Hamas and will treat every cleared area according to the Rafah model, where all threats were flattened and it became part of the security zone to protect Israel and divide the Gaza Strip and the terrorists from the Israeli population. When this has been accomplished, a new program from dismantling the humanitarian aid to the civilian population will be initiated. The program, which has been approved by the Security Cabinet in Israel, will differentiate between the civilian population in Gaza and Hamas terrorists by employing civilian companies and creating an area that will be secured by the IDF, including establishing a sterile zone in the Rafah area beyond the Morag corridor. Movement in and out of this zone will be filtered by the IDF to prevent the presence of any Hamas personnel. It was also reported that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in the discussion that this is a good plan because it can achieve both objectives, the defeat of Hamas and the return of the hostages. The Prime Minister of Israel clarified that the plan differs from former plans in that we are moving from the raid method to conquering territory and remaining in that territory in Gaza. The Prime Minister of Israel added that he continues to advance the Trump plan to enable the voluntary departure of Gazans from the Gaza Strip and that contacts on the matter are being held with several countries. And even before this operation gets underway, preparations for it are already moving the needle on negotiations. Between now and the visit of President Trump to the region, there is a window of opportunity for Hamas to accept the Witkoff model, by which their release of hostages will result in the IDF withdrawing from certain parts of the Gaza Strip. The IDF is trying to keep control of some areas that have been cleared of Hamas activity and a security zone established in that area. And in any case, in any temporary or permanent arrangement, Israel will not evacuate the security belt around Gaza that is intended to protect the communities and prevent weapon smuggling to Hamas. And beyond that, if no hostage deal is carried out, Operations Gideon's Chariots will commence with great force and will not stop until all its objectives are achieved. It is also important to bring up another aspect of this situation, and that is the undeniably dire humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, where enormous numbers of people are struggling to get their basic needs met. While the Hamas terrorist organization promotes propaganda about Israel subjecting the population of the Gaza Strip to systematic starvation, its terrorists roam the streets of Gaza, abusing the very civilian that Hamas is saying it's trying to protect. And this includes field trials and stealing food supplies and merchandise in broad daylight, and also physically abusing civilians on almost any pretext. Furthermore, the Sham unit published footage showing its terrorists abusing Palestinians who were accused of theft. Once again, we won't show you this footage, but we'll tell you about it. For starters, the arrested civilians have their eyes covered and their hands were tied behind their backs, and then they were thrown in the middle of the streets. Immediately afterwards, Hamas terrorists beat them brutally and shot them in the legs at close range. In the coming days, execution procedures were also expected to take place. As part of its propaganda efforts, Hamas claimed that the alleged robbers collaborated with Israel and even confessed to this during interrogations. This is interrogation by Hamas's internal apparatus. In reality, Hamas terrorists themselves have been documented several times during the war looting supplies or attacking Gazan shops, this in addition to confiscating merchandise from the population. And we must not forget that the terrorist organization continues to hold Israeli hostages, 59 Israeli hostages in Gaza. So let's pray for them. Guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development regarding the Gaza Strip. And as always, we ask you to help us by sharing our videos on YouTube and following us on social media. Most importantly, the best thing that you can do to help us share the truth is click the subscribe button, comment, like, click this little bell in the corner, and that way YouTube is circulating this video to more and more people, okay? So share the truth and help us in prayer. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Now, we switch our focus to the ongoing drama in Iran. According to a report in the news portal Iran International, this week the country unveiled a new ballistic missile with a range of 1,200 kilometers, and its name is Qasem Basir. And even they warned that American bases in the Middle East are within its reach. The report says that Iranian Defense Minister Aziz Nasirazadeh declared the advanced solid fuel missile was designed to evade advanced air defensive systems with special emphasis on the ability to bypass the American THAAD system. This is a system that has recently been deployed in Israel. He also claimed on Iranian state television that thanks to technological upgrades, the new missile can penetrate advanced air defensive arrays, even saying that with this new upgrade, Israel will not be able to intercept more than 5 missiles out of 200. Even by the standards of the threats we're used to hearing from Iranian officials, that's a little bit over the top. Iran routinely makes such claims and have been proven to be exaggerated so many times in the past, so I don't even know why they're bother to keep doing it, because no one takes them seriously anymore. You can leave a comment on this video if you have an opinion about all of this situation or anything else that you've seen or heard in this report, and let me know what you think about it. Although Iran's claims are often exaggerated and sometimes even completely false, we can't afford to ignore them and we need to prepare. While headlines in Israel naturally focus on the Gaza front, today the main attention of the Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, and the senior IDF officers is on the Iranian front, which still stands behind many events on all fronts, including the missile fire from Yemen. Although Israelis and others around the world are less aware of it, the IDF continues to prepare for a strike and even a campaign against Iran, viewing it as removing an existential threat for the state and the Jewish people. And while Iran tries to project business as usual and makes constant threats towards Israel and the United States, they're having a difficult time concealing the terrible state that their own country is in. This week, a senior Iranian official shared with media portals that the losses from the Shahid Rajaya port explosion are estimated at more than $3 billion United States dollars. This is just one of many such mysterious accidents involving factories and industrial facilities all over Iran over the past week. Iran's economy has already been in very poor shape even before this began. And each disruption to the supply chains just make a bad situation even worse. The military capabilities of Iran's armed forces have also taken a hit literally from this series of events. A plant in southwest Iran, which manufactures ammunition for the Revolutionary Guards, went up in smoke this week, resulting in injuries to several workers. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development regarding Iran, and as always, we ask you to keep spreading the truth, share, and follow us. And most importantly, don't forget to click that subscribe button and help us reach more people with what's happening in Israel so that they will know how to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We now switch our focus to the northern arena. A report on Monday in the El Arabiya news portal included sources in the Lebanese National Army declaring that as part of the fight against the manufacture and the trafficking of narcotics, a raid was carried out on a factory producing Captagon pills on the Lebanon-Syria border in the Harf el-Samaka Hermal area. It also noted that the patrol units dismantled and seized a large quantity of the narcotic pills in addition to the raw materials that are used to produce them. It is important to remember that trafficking in narcotics is a major source of revenue for Hezbollah, and in its final few years, it also became almost the only source of revenue for the Assad regime in Syria. According to several studies and press reports, this trend generated about $5.7 billion a year for the former Syrian regime, as it was financed by the 4th Division of the Syrian army headed by Maher al-Assad, the former president's brother. These deadly little pills were smuggled to many Arab and Western countries, causing immense damage to families, communities, and entire countries. Now, thanks to the Lebanese National Army, there is one less factory producing them. So I want to conclude today's report by offering some of my own analysis on the threat of the ballistic missile attacks from the Houthis in Yemen. Despite the countless nightly American strikes in the country, this is a headache for the Israeli security establishment, and the strike that managed to hit near the airport in Israel simply cannot be ignored. Deterrence is needed to be restored, and I hope that this has now been achieved with the strikes on the Hodeidah port in Yemen. Although the attacks from the Houthis are not a strategic danger to Israel, and so far there have been no Israeli fatalities from these missiles from Yemen, it is a significant annoyance to the IDF and above all, a terror tactic against the civilians and the citizens of the State of Israel and our economy, who are alarmed at every siren, and we are running to the bomb shelters in the middle of the night with our families. So the two missiles impacted from Yemen that have struck Israel since the campaign began, the first was a warhead fragment that hit a school in Ramat Efal. This is a city, a community in Israel, in December. The second was the missile that landed near the Ben Gurion International Airport on Sunday, and have shown the frightening potential damage of a direct Houthi hit. So Israel cannot take the risk of such an impact in the heart of a built-up area. However, the chance is little, given that until now missiles have been intercepted at a success rate of more than 90%. So let's continue to pray together for ourselves, for the people of Israel, for all of us around the world that are battling terrorism. Let's pray for our leaders, that they will have the ability to make the best and the wisest decisions in every situation. Let's pray for all of our forces that are now being called back to the Gaza Strip. My friends, many of the people around me in Jerusalem and across the country that need to leave their families and go to fight against Hamas again to retrieve our hostages. They need our prayers. And let's pray for all of our allies that are fighting the Houthis in Yemen. And one more thing, I think it's very important to also pray for our enemies. It's very hard for me personally to pray for the Houthis, but I don't want to pray for them to succeed in their attacks against Israel, of course. I want to pray that God will change their hearts, that instead of hatred towards Israel, they will have love towards the Jewish people, the people of Israel, and that there will be a peace in this region. Only God is able to make this happen. So let's unite in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.